CQ Contest, CQ Contest. This is November 0, Romeo Victor Sierra, N0 RVS, calling from Echo Mike 37, CQ Contest. Welcome to the Been There Doing That podcast. I'm Robert Scrivener.
And I'm Gayla Scrivener.
We left the 9-to-5 grind, downsized, and our goal is to have freedom to live and to work from just about anywhere.
Thanks for joining us today with the Been There Doing That podcast.
If this is your first time, thank you.
If it's not, welcome back.
That's right.
Well, we are
In the middle of a field.
On a high point on some family property because this weekend was a highlight in your Hamvangelist world.
Yes, it is the VHF, Very High Frequency Contest.
What does that mean?
Well, usually, according to the ARRL website, it's anything 50 megahertz and above. Includes 6 meters, 2 meters, 220, 432, 900 megahertz, 1.2 gig, I think, and 5 gigahertz and 10 gigahertz. You can get up there into the microwave section.
Well, for us non-Hamvangelist, but just married to a Hamvangelist, what is there a challenge to that? Do you hear people from a long distance? Is it what?
There is all kinds of challenges.
Like what?
Like VHF usually doesn't go that far. It does on occasion when there's tropospheric ducting going on in the upper layers, bounce it off and carry it out like skip. There's some a lot of propagation involved in getting long distance contacts on VHF, which I don't normally do VHF. I'm usually on HF around a 80 meter band, 3.8 megahertz, and 40 meter band, 7 megahertz. Occasionally on the 20 meter band, which is 14.2 megahertz, around in that area. That's where I hang out normally. So VHF stuff I don't normally do unless I'm in the car, and that's usually FM only. But this VHF contest includes a single sideband for getting your signal out there a little further. And I am set up portable, which there's a category for that. So there's portable is 10 watts or less. And you cannot change locations during the contest.
For portable, but then there's another classification called rover.
Rover, if you change locations, then you're roving, which they usually have their antennas strapped up on top of their car, a bunch of big antennas and Yagi beams pointed at certain locations, and have a antenna mast that goes up and down and a rotor on it to turn it, and quite extensive on that aspect of it.
And then you can be at home?
Their power is, I think, up to 1,500 watts on a rover.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And
you can be at home.
You can be at home.
You can do it FM now. They just started recently doing where you can do FM on the VHF contest. Usually it was single sideband only.
So typically, I mean, is there like a radius of where your contacts will be? It's fairly local. It wouldn't be... Usually,
if you make it 100 miles, you're doing good. But if you're running power, you're doing even, making it out beyond 100 miles. I made one contact yesterday. First time I've ever done this event, by the way. It was only a couple weeks away, and I was like, I want to try this. And so I started preparing for it.
Well, you wanted to try it for the challenge of it, I guess, huh?
Yes, I've never done VHF stuff, so wanted to do that, and started preparing, getting the antennas ready. And
did you already have the antennas?
Actually, I did. I had a 3-element beam for that Charles out in Tennessee said, here, you need this, take it home with you, and you do a lot of portable stuff. Make some use of it. So I did. And then I made a 6-meter dipole just recently out of copper. And I didn't have much luck with it. 6 meters. If the band is closed, you're not going to talk to your neighbor. And if it's open, you'll talk around the world on it. It's one of those weird things.
So you have been telling me for the last couple of weeks as you're preparing, is height is everything.
Yes, on VHF. Higher you can get your antenna, it is line of sight. So HF, not so much on line of sight. They do propagation, bounces around, and you'll make contact usually. But VHF, line of sight. It's
and these antennas are directional? So
directional. You can point your antenna in that direction and project your beam in that direction with all your might, all 10 watts.
That's all you have, right?
All I have. 10 watts.
10 watts. Well, then you have, that's why we picked this particular spot to...
It's a high point.
It's a high point. It's on family property. But we decided to take the opportunity to set up camp for this event.
Time out. I was going to tell you about my contact I made.
Okay.
The first one I made on VHF, single sideband, was 165 miles away.
That is further than you anticipated.
On 7 watts.
Wow.
On a 10-foot tall mast.
Wow.
That's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
And it was to, from basically just north of Stockton Lake, Missouri, to St. Mary's, Kansas.
Wow.
That was, you try to get the grid squares is what you're trying to talk to. Is the object is to talk to as many grid squares, which is 2 degrees by 1 degrees on the Maidenhead grid squares. And we are in EM37, Echo Mike 37, and you try to talk to all the different grid squares around you. And then the rovers, they rove around in the different grid squares and make contact to basically the same people they just talked to a while ago and double their points.
Yeah, you have some software that you use to keep track of who keeps some data points,
Yep.
and then you upload that up to...
Logbook of the world is what I use.
And then they calculate the contesting, and then you might get a certificate or what have you.
Yep.
It's kind of fun. Where did you get the logging software? They do a good job.
The logging software, I believe, is N3FJP. Yes, N3FJP. And they're out of, I want to say Maryland. And I've actually talked to the guy that did the software during Winter Field Day, whenever we did Winter Field Day.
Yeah, they do a good job on that. But we came out Saturday morning to set up camp at my family property. That was the tallest highest part, and it was just to kind of test out some things before we go to our North Carolina trip in a couple of weeks, and operate your portable radios for this contest. And one thing that we wanted to test out was last weekend we moved our rooftop tent. We moved it forward and rotated it, because when we folded it out, it was going off the back end of the Jeep. We wanted to rotate it because we wanted to be able to put the annex room on. That was important to me for this North Carolina trip. But we didn't do that originally because we needed crossbars.
Yes.
And so we ended up putting our, makeshift crossbars.
Makeshift crossbars. We bought some 1/2-inch galvanized tubing and pretty much used it for hauling a canoe on with our roof rack.
Yes, and it was been in storage for a while, and we used those pipes and U-bolts. Is that
Yep.
what they're called?
They're called U-bolts.
The U-bolts, and maneuvered that tent around, and you had a challenge with those U-bolts.
Yes, they were a little long with the tent on top and was digging into the roof.
And so you had to saw them off by hand because the Dremel wouldn't work because of the angle.
That's right.
But it took us longer than anticipated. Well, and it was kind of a one-person job because there was not much I could do. You did it all.
It took about 4 hours to rotate it around, get everything situated, line it up the way it was, and then it couldn't set on there straight. So we had to offset it to one side slightly.
And now we've got it all situated. We've unpacked everything, tested out the annex room, doing a little bit of repair from a window on the annex room, or one of the little mesh doors from Overland Expo West had some wind damage, and doing a little sewing on that. But otherwise, I think it's going to work.
Yes. I've got room to put a mast up there on the side next to the rooftop tent.
And
haul extra gear up there. And still have our solar panel on the back.
We have our solar panel on the back instead of the front because we moved the tent forward, kind of center of gravity.
There you go.
Type center weight distribution. And we're going to experiment before we pack things up this weekend on a plastic box to go underneath the solar panel for extra storage. I think that's ideal for the annex room, so it won't take inside room.
Yep. Keeping most tent stuff outside the vehicle.
Or rain gear.
Just rain gear.
Stuff like that may get icky, and we don't want them in the vehicle. So that has...
And it's okay if it gets wet out there.
It is okay. It is okay.
Don't put your, stuff that you don't want wet out there.
Exactly. Well, I'm thinking we were doing well with the tent experiment, but then we were unpacking your portable radio setup, and things didn't go as you had anticipated.
Well, no, they didn't.
Because height is everything.
Height is everything. So I bought 2 1.25 galvanized tubing pipe antenna TV mast, I guess you could call them.
When you've been using those for a while.
And I have. And we had a micro downburst a couple of weeks ago, about a month ago or so, and it broke in the middle.
Okay, a micro downburst. What the heck? Is that a windstorm?
Yeah. That's
Okay.
a small. It's a $5 word for a $2 project.
Okay.
So windstorm came through and knocked over TV antenna mast, basically what I'm saying.
Okay. Thank you very much for clarifying for me.
Yes. And we took it apart. The coupling broke in the middle. So I was like, well, I've got 2 pieces of pipe. I'm going to give me another coupling. I'll use this for my portable stuff. So I got 2 of them this time. So that put me up about 20 foot, since height is everything.
Well, we started unpacking, and you were putting together your antenna, and you were having me help you with the guide wires, and we were trying to lift it up. And
it broke.
The silly coupling broke.
Right in the middle.
It's like Play-Doh or something.
They don't make them very well. So I had a backup one.
Yes.
I stuck it on there and I was tightening it down, and it broke while I was tightening it down.
Your bottom lip stuck out.
Yeah.
You were a little displeased. You didn't get real angry, but things were not going.
They were not going like I anticipated they would.
And since we were parked close to home, we actually brought both the Subaru and the Jeep. The tent was already unpacked on the Jeep, and we were getting hungry. We didn't want to get hangry, so I took the Subaru to town. Well, we have a little tiny, like, hardware store.
Mom and pop hardware store.
Crossing my fingers that I'd find one of those couplings or something similar. But on a Saturday by noon, they're closed.
It was afternoon.
Yeah, I got there right at noon. And so I went over to the grocery store and got food. That was
priority.
That was time well spent. And I came back. We ate and regrouped, just trying to decide whether I would go and drive further on either direction. About 30 miles either direction would get us a little bit bigger store.
That would possibly be open on a Saturday.
And you decided to make do with what you had, because that's what we would have done anywhere else.
That's the ham way.
That's the ham way.
It's the ham way.
Exciting.
I know. So 10 foot is all I got. My little 3-element Yagi beam up there, pointed pretty much west, northwest, hoping to hit some Kansas City, Topeka, Wichita. Did hear some Parsons, Kansas, and some people down in Oklahoma. So,
well, you've heard more people than you've been able to reach out to.
Yes, I hear a little bit better than I can transmit. I can receive better than I can transmit.
And you've made 2 official contacts.
2 official contacts. One was, I think, 97 miles, AA0KM, which would be a buddy of mine up there in Marshall, Missouri. And he's always by the radio. And the other one was out to St. Mary's, Kansas, which is 165 miles.
You were excited about that.
I was excited about that one. So I've made 2 contacts, and the contest is still going on as we're doing this podcast.
Yeah, you needed a break from the static a little bit, so we thought we'd record this podcast. Another thing that we were testing is, for our trip to North Carolina, was your handy talkies or your Baofangs.
Yeah, I got a couple of Baofeng UV5R radios. They are a dual band radio, but they also will transmit on any frequency they can receive on. So it was kind of a no-no, but kind of nice, because it also does FRS, Family Radio Service, and GMRS, and covers those frequencies also.
Well, the family radio is basically walkie-talkie, isn't it?
Yeah, 400 megahertz range. So.
And so you don't need a license for that.
No.
So if you find it very important for us to be able to communicate when we're at Overland Expo East, just in case our phones don't work or if we get separated, it's such a large event. And
yeah, because it did not work. Phones did not work at the Overland Expo West.
That's right.
We had no internet on our phone, no cell service really. So it was, we needed some sort of communication if we got separated.
So at the last Ham Fest that we went to in Joplin, I think you bought another Baofeng.
I did. $35. You can usually find them on Amazon too for around $35.
And since I don't have my license, we are limited to the family frequencies. And so you had set mine up so I won't mess it up, or told me where to stay, what buttons to push. And so this weekend we wanted to try it to see how far can we go. Well, how many miles are we from home?
Cross country, I'd say about 1.5 miles.
Okay. So
by road, 2.
So we drove home.
2.5.
Yeah. And we were able to drive home and still hear each other.
On the rubber ducky antennas.
Yes. And you're quite impressed.
I am.
Because I don't think I'll be that far from you.
No, and if you are, I'll meet you halfway.
Okay. But we were inside. I was inside the RV and I could still hear you, and just walking around. And this morning, this was last night that you were pleased with the experiment of that. And then this morning, I ran home to take care of the wiener dogs and took care of a few things at home, and you were here, And we don't have cell phone coverage here
Nope.
on the hill.
Cell phone coverage does not work here.
And I did not take the little Bofang.
No, you didn't.
And so we had a terrible time communicating with each other. So
I tried calling out and didn't work. Tried calling the other house phone and didn't work. Call dropped. You tried calling me and I tried to answer and the call dropped.
So we could text. You do have our... you also have internet, so
Yep.
we could do a few things because our hotspot internet works, but our Sprint service does not. Don't say it.
Oh, boy.
But lesson learned.
Yep.
You have convinced me that I'm not so annoyed about carrying around this little walkie-talkie.
Say that again.
Nope, it's recorded, so I don't have to say it again. But yes, you were right.
Okay. It's recorded.
It's recorded. You can push replay over and over. Well, what's this experience taught you with, and I know it's got you thinking because you've been talking about, there's more of these events coming up. There's one in January.
There's one in January, one in June, and then this one is September. But there's several events every weekend in the amateur radio world. Contests going on somewhere out there every weekend. But January, I think I would like to try it again. And I don't know if I want to do Rover or if I want to do stationary, portable.
Mm-hmm.
And if I do that, it'd be 10 watts or less. But I think I would like to up the antenna game. A better beam antenna for projecting my signal out there a little farther.
You had talked about getting a wider...
And transverters. I want to be able to get a transverter, put on the old 730 ICOM.
Because it transverts.
There you go. And do a 432 70 centimeter ham band also, since I don't have a radio for that. It's cheaper than buying a radio.
A transverter is basically like something that's it translates signal so it can be on different
pretty much
different frequencies than what it's designed for.
There you go.
I'm not taking the test.
Why don't you just take the test? You know you want to pass the test.
I'm just trying to dumb things down for me to understand.
Oh, boy.
But you had talked about getting higher, maybe getting a bigger pipe.
Yes.
And instead of using a coupling.
Slide my 1.25 inch mast into a bigger pipe there, and with some bolts attach it that way, a little firmer attachment rather than a coupling.
Yeah. Those couplings have just failed.
Failed 3 times out of all 3 that we bought.
We're probably not using them as designed.
You're probably right.
But do you have fun this weekend?
I had a blast. Even though I've only made 2 contacts so far and the contest's still going, and it's approximately 2:19 in the afternoon, and it goes on for another almost 8 hours till 10 o'clock tonight.
Well, I don't know how long we'll be staying camped up, but we're close to home.
We are close to home. We can pack up and go home at any time.
But I don't know if there's any Hamvangelists that are listening, but you have a T-shirt for that.
There is a T-shirt. How do we get to that T-shirt, Gayla?
Well, it is on Been There doing that.
Yes.
However, there's a whole website called hamvangelist.com.
Yes, there is. Hamvangelist.com. You want to spell that out for them so they know how?
No. Ham and then Vangelist.
That's right. Hamvangelist.
But it's kind of a fun. What's the definition of Hamvangelist?
Oh, it's a person that has high enthusiasm about amateur radio with high frequency.
Something similar.
Oh, propagates. I got my words and all mixed up.
But it's a fun little T-shirt. You should check it out. And if you have somebody that likes ham radio, you might want to give a gift of a T-shirt.
That's right.
But Life is an experiment, isn't it?
It is an experiment. If you ain't experimenting, at least have fun at it.
And this weekend's experience really has helped us plan for our trip in a couple of weeks and gets us out of the RV and outside.
And it's been a beautiful outside. 2 days.
It has.
In the shade, nice breeze. Solar panels are out in the sun doing their thing.
It makes us think and troubleshoot. And
keeps us on our toes.
It does. It does. And we appreciate you tuning in for another episode of Been There Doing That podcast.
Yep. If you have any questions or comments or suggestions, where can they go?
They can email us at podcast@beentheredoingthat.com. And if you're listening to us on iTunes, we'd appreciate it if you'd subscribe and maybe put in a review for us.
That's right. We'll catch you all later.